The new defense strategy calls for regionally aligned forces, RAF. For AFRICOM, this is a brigade combat team coming from Fort Riley. How do you see them being deployed?
This is going to be huge. What it does for me, for the first time, is gives me predictable availability of forces. AFRICOM has no assigned forces. So every time we need a military force, we have to go back and ask the department for it. The Army has come forth. Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force have followed suit, but the Army was first and said, here's a brigade. We're going to make, the Chief of Staff of the Army says, I'm going to make this brigade available to you for a year through the Army service component. U.S. Army Africa, Major General Pat Donahue and his team have planned a year's worth of engagements for that brigade. General Donahue had the opportunity to shape their training and their preparation, and this is going to, I cannot overstate the importance. It's also important to understand what the brigade isn't. We're not going to take 4,500 soldiers from Fort Riley, Kansas, and plunk them down at one place in Africa with their tanks and their Bradleys and their everything else. What we will see is small detachments. So a military working dog team, a medical team, a logistics team, a military police, an engineering, an infantry platoon or company working with an African partnership. And I've forgotten the numbers now, but I think General Donahue has engagements in over 40 African countries planned for that brigade, each individually tailored to the needs of that military force and of the U.S. ambassador. So I could not be more excited about this endeavor.
Today we're in the Republic of Cameroon at Exercise Central Accord. What's the significance of exercises like these?
We do very much appreciate the bilateral partnership with Cameroon. It's very strong. It's growing stronger. We want to continue that, continue to nurture that bilateral relationship. But the African Union, its regional economic communities, each have plans for regional standby forces. Those standby brigades have not really, they haven't transitioned from an idea into reality. So exercises such as Central Accord and other regional exercises, we're trying to leverage as an opportunity for regional cooperation with an ultimate goal of helping the regional economic communities develop the regional standby forces that they say they want. So I think that's a second very important outcome of Central Accord.
How dependable are the partners that we're developing?
Well, they're mixed. You know, we did a lot of training with the Malian army, and they collapsed. The senior leadership in Mali didn't support the coup, but they didn't resist it either. The unit that we had worked most closely with was very quickly disbanded by the coup leaders. And many of the leaders were imprisoned. We fear some were killed. So there's an example at the very worst end of the spectrum of an engagement that clearly did not work in any way, shape, or form. But at the other end of the spectrum, there are lots of African militaries who are performing with skill, with honor, integrity, with great bravery. We see again going back to Mali, we watched the performance of Chad's military. Very, very tough fighting, significant losses, but yet they are achieving their objectives. So and then the range is in between those two.
Sequestration is in effect. Money is really, really tight. AFRICOM's never really had a robust budget. How will you now prioritize where to focus your efforts?
Two big effects. Within the headquarters, we're an Army-funded headquarters. Each combatant command has a service proponent. Ours is Army. So we follow the Army rules with regard to the possible furlough of civilian employees and other changes. So there will be some effect, the worst of which is the potential civilian furlough. And like all other organizations, we're being more critical about travel, about conferences and seminars. It doesn't mean we don't do any. We will do some because engagement in Africa is largely a personal relationship building exercise. So we need to do some of that, but we will be judicious. On the operational front, it will manifest itself in two ways. First is exercises such as Central Accord. We will see and already have reduced the scale of some exercises. We will probably in fiscal year 14 cancel some exercises. And then the real impact, real operational impact will be felt by Africa Command's service components, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps. So every aircraft that flies in Africa, every ship that sails in Africa, the regionally aligned force for the Army, the Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force of the Marine Corps, the services pay for those. I don't pay for those. And what I owe those service components is prioritization, so that they continue to fund and resource the highest priority engagements. But the reality is we will do less. As General Odierno says often, you don't do more with less, you do less with less. And that's just a hard reality, and we will do less in Africa in the current budget situation.
Doesn't that send a mixed message to the partners that you're looking to develop here on the continent?
Well, yes, except for the fact that they too have significant budget challenges. That what I think the best approach with them is just to be completely honest, to make sure they know intuitively that we're going through a budget crisis, but in dialogue with them to say, hey, here's what we're going through. We're going to have to adjust how we do business. Maybe fewer exercises, scaled down exercises, less visits, less conferences, but do it in cooperation with them and make sure our efforts are synchronized. Secondly, I think there's an opportunity that the budget reductions will cause us to do what we should have been doing already, and that's coordinate more closely and synchronize our efforts with other international participants in security matters in Africa. This is largely the Europeans, but it's also Brazil and India, and maybe even China, though maybe that'll be a little bit tougher to do. But we can't. None of us have the resources to duplicate efforts. But we also want to make sure we're not leaving any gap.
Sir, what's the end state?
Well, there's a way. In one way, we want to kind of, at least operationally, work ourselves out of a job, so that African militaries are increasingly capable of providing for their own defense and for contributing to regional security and stability as well. So operationally, best is that the U.S. is not required to engage operationally in Africa. But we'll always be engaged in Africa. We should. These are great partners. These are important to the United States, and we want to maintain a very strong, healthy, enduring military-to-military partnership. And so I think that's where we want to head to.